Join our community by subscribing. Every click helps us share more stories like this one. The introduction. The early morning fog lay thick over the quiet town of Ridgewood, cloaking familiar streets and rooftops in an eerie sheen. As the sun struggled to break through the dense mist, the sound of distant sirens pierced the stillness, a warning bell in a place that had long enjoyed a peaceful existence. It was a community where everyone knew each other, where the occasional shoplifting incident barely stirred conversation. But on that bleak morning in October, the tranquility was shattered. Murder had touched Ridgewood. At precisely 6:45 a.m., Officer Sarah Mitchell arrived at Alder Drive, a narrow, tree-lined street renowned for its charm. The local residents, mostly older couples whose children had left the nest, were still sipping coffee in their kitchens, blissfully unaware of the horror unfolding just a few doors down. A white van sat at the curb, doors ajar, as police cars swarmed the scene. Officer Mitchell stepped out of her vehicle, her breath visible in the damp air. The familiar scent of wet leaves mingled with the sterile, sharp tang of the police tape. Officers on site were exchanging hushed voices, their expressions grim. Beyond the crimson tape, she could see the outline of a body beneath a gray tarp, still, silent, a tragic end to a life yet to be celebrated. As she approached, a nagging sense of dread filled the air, leaving a chill more profound than the October breeze. Today, the town of Ridgewood would awaken to an indelible scar, and nothing would ever be the same again. The victim. While the fog began to dissipate, the atmosphere remained thick with palpable anxiety as Ridgewood residents slowly gathered their curiosity around the unfolding tragedy. Officer Mitchell focused her attention on the body beneath the tarp. It belonged to Elaine Carter, a 42-year-old mother of two, who had lived in the neighborhood for nearly a decade. Known for her radiant smile and infectious laughter, she was a fixture in the community, volunteering at the local school and organizing weekend bake sales to support youth activities. Elaine's life was marked by warmth. Her house, adorned with cheerful decorations, stood in stark contrast to the grim circumstances of her death. The police slowly peeled back the edges of the tarp, revealing her lifeless form. Dark hair framed her face, now marred with an unsettling stillness. Officer Mitchell couldn't shake the thought that this was the same woman she had seen just days prior, laughing with friends over coffee at the corner cafe. As the first light of day pierced through the clouds, a bitter truth loomed. This vibrant, beloved figure had been taken in an act of violence. The coroner's van arrived, a grim reminder of the fragility of life. Questions roared in the officer's mind, unrelenting. Who would want to hurt a woman who devoted her life to helping others? Just then, a group of onlookers breathed a collective gasp, eyes wide and searching for reassurance. But the stark truth lay heavy over them today. They were not spectators of a mystery. They were witnesses to tragedy interwoven with their everyday lives. The crime scene. As the coroner's team began their meticulous work, Officer Mitchell surveyed the area surrounding the crime scene. Alder Drive, once a seemingly idyllic slice of Ridgewood, transformed into a collection of somber reminders that evil could lurk in the most unsuspected places. Neighbors stood quietly to the side, apprehension painted on their faces, eyes darting between the police and the home, where Elaine had spent countless nights laughing and dreaming. The officers established a perimeter, carefully placing markers in the moist earth. Every step felt laden with urgency, and Mitchell focused on gleaning every detail from the scene. Nearby, a set of footprints were sunk into the dewy grass, leading away from the driveway and toward a thicket of trees. The absence of a struggle indicated that Elaine likely hadn't anticipated any danger. This was no random act. It hinted at a personal connection or animosity. The ground beneath the trees was littered with fallen branches and scattered leaves, and Mitchell felt a twinge of unease as the team began to comb through this particular section. A rustle broke the silence, turning heads toward a brown leather handbag discarded carelessly in the undergrowth. It was unmistakably Elaine's. While another officer examined its contents, Mitchell caught fragments of conversations around her. Neighbors murmured about a lingering tension in the neighborhood, while others speculated on bitter rivalries flaring from seemingly harmless exchanges. As much as she wanted to dismiss idle gossip, she couldn't help but feel their guarded apprehension. Each whisper felt like a thread weaving into the fabric of a larger mystery. Something was brewing beneath the surface of their quaint town, hidden by the fog of complacency. The more she uncovered, the more evident it became that Ridgewood was no longer the untouched locale she and others had always known. The early investigation. With the body transported for an autopsy and the crime scene secured, Officer Mitchell returned to the station, her mind still heavy with the echoes of that morning. Inside the busy precinct, the atmosphere buzzed with urgency. Officers worked diligently at their desks, tapping away at keyboards and exchanging snippets of information, while the air carried a sense of expectation. Mitchell turned her attention to the preliminary reports regarding Elaine Carter. What had initially seemed like a closed case of loss now unfurled itself into a tangled web of relationships and emotions. The first step was reaching out to Elaine's family. She requested a meeting with her husband, Mark, who would surely be grappling with his own grief. But it was pertinent to gather as much information as possible. She needed to know about Elaine's life, her acquaintances, and anyone who might have posed a threat to her. Meanwhile, a younger officer, Ray Gomez, had taken the lead on tracing Elaine's last known movements. Surveillance footage from nearby shops had been requested, as well as insights from local businesses. As the day marched on, he uncovered something interesting. Just days before her death, Elaine had been seen in heated discussions with a woman named Julie Anderson, a former friend turned rival over a mutual affair gone wrong. The tension between the two had not been isolated, but instead hinted at a deeper conflict that had festered. Officer Gomez printed the shaky images from the surveillance camera, intrigued by the spark of anger that flickered across Elaine's face. Soon, Mitchell stood in front of the screens, her heart racing with unanswered questions. There was promise in those glimpses of interaction, a flicker that suggested Elaine's death wasn't just a tragedy, it was a story in itself, layered in complexities that demanded unearthing. The dead ends. As days turned into a week since the tragic death of Elaine Carter, the initial excitement surrounding the investigation began to dissipate, replaced by an unsettling sense of stagnation. Officer Mitchell sat in a small, poorly lit conference room, the walls adorned with hastily scribbled timelines and photos of potential suspects. A whiteboard filled with names and connections stared back at her, but the threads seemed to lead nowhere. Mark Carter had cooperated, providing the police with a timeline of his wife's activities leading up to her murder, but without any concrete evidence or motive. The more they probed into Elaine's relationships, the clearer it became that they only painted a picture of a woman loved and respected by her community, which made her untimely death all the more perplexing. Even Julie Anderson, the supposed rival, had an alibi. She claimed to have been out of state the night of the murder, and surveillance footage confirmed her whereabouts. The officers turned to look for common threads among Elaine's circle of friends and acquaintances in Ridgewood, but each lid fell flat. The bakery where she often worked on the weekends reported only fond memories of her good-natured spirit. No animosity existed among her coworkers. Community members who had known her well expressed disbelief and shock, insisting that she had lived a life without enemies. One afternoon, Mitchell found herself riding the spirals of frustration as she thumbed through the police records again. It was too quiet, too stagnant, a stark contrast to the chaos of her memories of that foggy morning. She sighed, letting her thoughts drift to the haunting possibility that perhaps the clues lay deeper, entangled in emotions and unspoken grievances that hid beneath gilded exteriors. It dawned on her that sometimes the most dangerous secrets are neatly tucked away within lives that appear perfect. A break in the case. Just as Officer Mitchell felt the heavy weight of stagnation beginning to suffocate her resolve, a breakthrough emerged unexpectedly from the shadows. It was on a dreary Thursday when Officer Gomez approached her, a glimmer of excitement in his eyes. He broke the narrative of silence that had enveloped the investigation within a flurry of newfound hope. "I pulled the phone records for Elaine," he began, anxiety edging his voice, as if he feared his hunch might lead them down yet another dead end. "There are several calls from a blocked number before her murder. They seemed to intensify in frequency in the days leading up to it." Mitchell's pulse quickened. The use of a blocked number often hinted at something more sinister, a connection concealed by deceit. After cross-referencing the call logs with the timeline they had built, it became clear that these calls occurred during moments when Mark was away or busy at work. Determined to get to the heart of these mysterious communications, they reached out to a telecommunications expert who promised access to the data associated with the call. The specialists worked quickly, and by the following day, the traceables revealed a name: Jason Riderman, from Elaine's past, someone unknown to her immediate circle. The name sent icy chills through Mitchell. Jason had been a high school sweetheart of Elaine's, and while they had gone their separate ways, old flames can sometimes spark flames of jealousy and rage. As they gathered more information on Jason's whereabouts, Mitchell felt a mix of dread and anticipation. This man might hold the answers they sought, perhaps shedding light on the final dark moments of Elaine's life. What had motivated his call? Was he a mere echo from her past, or something more dangerous? The stakes had grown higher, and the air buzzed with anticipation. The suspect, with Jason Reed's name surfacing as a potential suspect, the atmosphere in the precinct shifted from a heavy air of uncertainty to a taut, electrified tension. Officer Mitchell and Gomez went to work immediately, delving into Jason's life, unearthing details that might reveal whether he was just another faded chapter in Elaine's story or a threat lurking in the shadow. Jason was a local handyman, often spotted repairing homes across Ridgewood. He had a steady clientele, and several neighbors spoke fondly of his work ethic. But there was an underlying sense of aloofness that accompanied him. As they reviewed past interactions with Elaine in town logs, Mitchell discovered that Jason had returned to Ridgewood approximately 6 months before the murder, a puzzling coincidence. Strikingly, he had tried to reconnect with Elaine using social media, a failed attempt, as her posts indicated she had moved on, her marriage to Mark solid. But contacts found on those platforms hinted at a deeper connection. Mutual friends who noted Jason's lingering infatuation and his unsettling mannerisms whenever Elaine's name came up in conversation. When they finally tracked him down, Jason appeared unassuming, dressed in faded jeans and a wrinkled shirt, leaning against a truck outside a hardware store. However, both officers recognized the flicker of nerves behind his casual demeanor. He had denied making any unpleasant calls, claiming that he'd only wished to catch up after years apart. But the look in his eye told a different story, a mix of regret and something else. Perhaps a longing twisted into bitterness. As they interrogated him, Jason's responses were disjointed and evasive, almost rehearsed, as if he anticipated their line of questioning. It was during this conversation that Mitchell caught a slight of vague reference to ending it all should Elaine choose to completely shut him out of her life. The words ricocheted in the room, sending a stark chill through the officers. With the evidence weighing against him, Jason Reed suddenly transformed from a distant name on a list to a serious contender in a case rife with pain and uncertainty. The tension was palpable as they recognized the potential depth of the investigation unfolding before them. The trial. Months flickered by, and the aftermath of Elaine Carter's murder reverberated through the quiet town of Ridgewood. The arrest of Jason Reed sent ripples of shock, anger, and grief through the community. It seemed like every face wore the imprint of heartbreak, each conversation layered with whispered hopes for justice. Finally, the day arrived when the trial would unfold. Day that would reveal the truth behind the dark shadow that had swallowed Elaine's vibrant life. The courtroom was filled to capacity. Officer Mitchell sat quietly among the spectators. Observing his family members shuffled in. The judge, an imposing figure, called the proceedings to order, and the room settled into a hushed expectancy. As the prosecution laid out its case, key evidence flew across the room. The block calls Jason made to Elaine, the timeline of their reconnection, and testimony from neighbors who had become increasingly uneasy about the once comforting presence of the handyman filled the air and stung like icy wind. Mark Carter, Elaine's grieving husband, took the stand, recounting loving memories layered with anguish, a heart torn between love and loss. Defense strategies soon pivoted to discredit the prosecution's case, attempting to weave doubt around Jason's guilt, arguing that the relationship between Elaine and her past was benign, underestimating how jealousy could amplify a brief encounter into something sinister. Nevertheless, the undercurrents of unease stayed ever present. Jason's reactions, a flash of emotions during cross-examination, A slight tremble in his voice spoke louder than any defense could. As days turned into weeks, the weight of testimonies bore down heavily on everyone involved. Moments of silence fell between the testimonies. Each heartbeat echoed with the unsaid what had finally driven a person to murder. By the time closing arguments were delivered, the courtroom felt like a pressure cooker on the brink of explosion. Finally, the jury retreated to deliberate, and all eyes turned expectantly toward the door. A communal breath held tight in their chests. It was a case woven into the fabric of their lives, and as much as they sought justice, they also carried the heartbreaking reality that someone would never return home again. The aftermath. The verdict came late in the afternoon, a quiet murmur rippling through the crowd gathered outside the courthouse. Jason Ride was found guilty of second-degree murder. As he was led away in handcuffs, the stark contrast of the judge's gavel echoing in the chamber contrasted sharply with the fragile silence that engulfed the spectators. Some wept openly. Others stood stoic, wearing expressions masked with relief and lingering sadness. Officer Mitchell felt a cacophony of emotions wash over her. Yet it was followed by a profound sense of emptiness. While justice had been served in a sense, the void left by Elaine's absence could never be filled. For her family and friends, the months ahead would bring a different kind of challenge. The painful process of healing amid the upheaval of memories forever tainted by tragedy. With the trial concluded, life in Ridgewood began to shift, the weight of the past looming heavily over its residents. The corner cafe, once vibrant and full of laughter, sat quieter as friends wrestled with their loss over coffee. And memorials outside the Carter home became a poignant reminder of love that had been cruelly interrupted. Mark Carter, now tasked with navigating life as a single parent to their 2 children, struggled with a solitude that hung heavy in the air. He sought counseling to help process the agony of loss, while members of the community worked diligently to support him and his family, eager to show their solidarity during such a harrowing chapter. As Officer Mitchell continued her work within the precinct, she often found herself reflecting on Elaine's case, how easily comfort can be shattered, how intricate lives could intertwine and unravel within moments. Each face she passed on the street now bore deeper significance. Every smile held a potential story, and each stranger could represent a fracture of hurt concealed behind the facade of normalcy. Conversations drifted toward a renewed appreciation for love and community. The actions of one had transformed their collective fabric forever. As autumn leaves danced down Alder Drive, a somber truth lingered. Healing was not a destination, but a journey. And for everyone touched by Elaine's life, it would take time to navigate the steps forward into the light. Reflection. As the leaves continued to fall and the days grew shorter, a quiet reflection hung over Ridgewood. Officer Mitchell often found herself sitting in a small cafe, favorite spot where she could gaze at the lingering changes within the community. The atmosphere was different, now brimming with both resilience and fragility that came in the wake of such a harrowing event. Every sip of coffee brought a new wave of contemplation. She considered Elaine's vibrant life, the laughter that once echoed through the streets and homes of Ridgewood, now replaced by whispered stories of loss. As the seasons turned, so did the conversation among neighbors. People began to share not only their grief, but also their hopes. The initial shock transformed into a bond that strengthened the fabric of their tightly knit community. Mitchell couldn't help but resonate with this transformation. understanding that they were now forever intertwined through a shared sorrow. The case had shed light on the complexities of human relationships and the hidden struggles many faced beneath their surfaces. Elaine had not only been a victim but also a catalyst for change, prompting those around her to cherish every moment and honor lives, making a concerted effort to nurture connections that matter most. In the months that followed, life continued to pulse through Ridgewood. Each day carried a renewed promise of healing, a reminder that even in darkness there existed the determination to illuminate the path ahead. It was in these quiet reflections that Mitchell found hope and acknowledgement that even in loss, love remains, and through remembrance, the spirit of those we cherish never truly fades.